Hey everybody, it's Jack Graham, and we're here for another episode, I guess, of Straight Talk with Jack. And today we're going to talk a little bit about vinyl. We'll get into a little bit about some 45 RPM vinyls that are out. Talk to you about why theoretically they're better. Not all of them are, and some other things. So let's get started. First of all, thank you all for being here, and it's fun for me to kind of share some of the information I have. There's a lot of stuff you should also be finding here on YouTube that'll help you if you're into collecting music. I buy a lot of vinyl records. Once in a while, if I can't find the record because I like the music, I'll still buy it on CD. But I have to tell you that the vinyl experience is quite amazing and always has been. And as many of you know, is experiencing a resurgence in the last couple of years. There's some really amazing sounding stuff around. You don't need one of those $1 million systems that you read in the Absolute Sound or Stereophile or whatever to appreciate it. You do need some decent equipment. I don't have $1 million. I have a good little system. It's good. It's not, it's not ultra expensive. In fact, compared to some of the real audiophiles, my stuff is quite basic. But I have a good amplifier and a good preamplifier. Speakers are good for this room here. It's not a very big room, and I enjoy what I have. And but the quality of the source has to be really good, and the playback system, turntable, cartridge has to be representative as well. So I think you've heard all of that. So let's just get on to talking about some music. Some new things that I've picked up in the last couple weeks. I've had some pretty lousy weather up here in the Pacific Northwest, so I've been spending a fair amount of time inside listening to a lot of music, and there's a lot of new stuff that's out. Before I get into this, let me just say that if you are beginning to collect vinyl, or if you are collecting vinyl, you may already know this, but as everything else that's happening in our world these days, the supply chain has hit the vinyl community, and that goes down to the vinyl itself, to the paper that the sleeves are made of, the glue that goes into the sleeves. The shipping costs have gone up, so the folks that are doing the sales, whether it's a retailer like D and Groove in Phoenix, Arizona, who I buy a lot of things from. They're great people. Or Acoustic Sounds, which produces music as well as sells it. They're in Salina, Kansas, and or some of the other people that are around. Their shipping costs are going to go up, or they are going up, and I'm seeing gradually the shipping costs become crazy. It's not these folks, it's just the cost of shipping these days. So everything's going up. Milk is going up. You've seen meat. Well, vinyl's no exception. So if you see something you want, buy it, because it's not going to get any cheaper. In fact, when they go to repress, which we'll talk about in a minute, I guarantee you they're going to be 20% more. At minimum, maybe 25 or 30% more, because of the cost of production, the cost of shipping, and everything. So if you see something that you think you want, if you can, swing it, buy it now, because they're not going to get any cheaper. How these things work, and let's just take a recording here that I received probably about 10 days ago. The Dave Brubeck recording of Time Out, which has the popular Take 5 on it. I'm not a Brubeck guy. I mean, he plays good. He wrote some great tunes, but I'm really not a Dave Brubeck fan. I love Desmond, though. I like his sound. I like the fact that when a lot of alto players are trying to sound like Charlie Parker, Desmond created his own sound. It's a very light, can be energetic, but a very lyrical player. So I bought this. And why did I buy it? I bought it because it's a 45 RPM reissue of this record. It's produced by Analog, or actually it's done by Analog Productions, which is, again, in Salina, Kansas. They do their own pressing. They do their own everything. And they own a company called Quality Record Pressings, or QRP. I happen to have one of their sweatshirts on today, coincidentally. But this record here, I think now that these have been out and been shipped, there's still a few around. I think they're around $60, which isn't too bad because you have two records on here. Why do you have two records? Because it's a 45 RPM record as opposed to a 33 and a third. So what's the advantage? Theoretically, the advantage is you'll hear more detail. I hear more nice, crisp cymbal work by the drummers, a little more airy sound by the reed players, a little bit clearer sound on the horn players. But that also has to do with a couple other things too. It has to do with who did the lacquering, who did the mixing. Bernie Grubman did the mastering on this, and in fact, the story is when this record, when Grubman got the master tapes from the studio, they didn't sound good, and in fact, he said they sounded pretty flat. He's a genius, right along with Kevin Gray and Hoffman and just a myriad of people. Maybe not a myriad, but maybe about a dozen people who do mastering. And that mastering can really make or break the record, and it made this record. I believe that this record sounds as good as it does, and it sold as many copies, and it sold a lot of copies back when it came out in the 60s. Because of Grubman, and he made it sound better than the master tapes. It's an art, just like the people in the studio, just like the musicians themselves. Where this is mastered and where it's pressed can make a difference. This is pressed at QRP, and they're a great facility. They do great pressing. Very quiet record. Very quiet. I want to say quiet lacquer. That's kind of the term, but it's really just really quiet. RTI in Southern California is another good one. There are some marginal ones, but I'm really excited to hear this. This is going to be a listening experience for this weekend. I used to own this record, the original Columbia, back in the day, and I don't have it anymore. I wish I did. It's worth quite a bit of money. But I'm quite sure that this record, if I could A-B the two, would sound way better than the original record. People collect original records because they want to have the original record, but I have to tell you that the reissued stuff that's coming out now sounds a lot better than the originals. It's cool to have the originals. It's cool to have hold the original record, but these reissues are awesome, and this is supposed to be really good. So I'm excited to hear this tonight. Another record that was done in at 45 RPM is 7 Steps to Heaven by Miles Davis. That's what's playing in the background here. One of my favorite records. It would be in my top 10 all-time favorite recordings. This is a group that Miles had, one of his quintets, my favorite quintet of his, in the mid-60s. And this is with of course, Tony Williams on drums, Herbie Hancock on piano, Ron Carter on bass, George Coleman plays alto on here, and of course Miles. But this is musically just super, and the sound is amazing. The little story behind this record is that the rhythm section of this record, Miles was redoing his quintet prior to this group. Let's see, Jimmy Cobb was the drummer, Wynton Kelly was the pianist, and Miles is looking for some new blood, as he did a lot, to create a different sound. Miles is always looking to create new footprints in his music. I'm told Miles never really listened to his old records because he said they were done. It's over. Let's move on to something new. He did with this record. The rhythm section here, Miles hired literally the day before this record was made. He listened to Herbie and listened to Tony and listened to Ron Carter kind of play at his apartment in New York a day or two before, and told them to meet him at Columbia Records the next day, and they cut this record. And when you listen to this, you think these guys have been working together for years, but musically these guys are geniuses. Again, 45 RPM. You can still buy this. It's still in print, and what you can't buy, I think it's out of print, is the 33 1/3 version, which I've had for a while, which sounds great. So again, why did a 45 sound better? Because they're cleaner and they're theoretically have better sound. However, if the mastering's done, for example, at a different mastering facility, that person may make the record sound a little different. And there are a few of those around that the 33s, to me, actually sound better than some of the 45s that I have. I think the 45 on this is going to be better than the 33, but we'll find out. There's so much that goes into this other than the music to make a record really sound good. I never realized it till I got into this, but it's really quite amazing how important who does the mastering is, and who does the pressing. So again, this record here is the reissue. It's done by QRP in Kansas, and it's an Analog Productions piece, as is the 33. And I'm sure that's why I think these are pretty much going to sound the same. But they're going to be great. So that'll be another fun hour or two. I don't just buy new records. I buy some used stuff as well. And here's a used record that I found. There's a local dealer not too far from me that has a lot of jazz. And someone must have brought in a bunch of records from Contemporary Records. Contemporary is a label back from Southern California, Los Angeles. Recorded a lot of West Coast players back in the 60s and I guess 70s. I think they sold after that. But they were known for clarity, good for great sound. If you can find a contemporary record that is in good shape, and they are hard to find in good shape, but they are really great sounding records, far better than the CD. I have the CD of this, and I A-B'd the two, and there's no comparison. The openness of the vinyl on this is amazing. It's a 1A, so it's an early cut off the lacquer on this. But whoever had this kept it in really good condition, and I think I only probably paid. I bet I paid $15 for this record, and it sounds great. The not always, but you can kind of tell how good the record's going to sound by how good the sleeve is. People who take care of their records, they keep everything really good, and this sounded good. There was also a Shelly Manne at the Black Hawk. Same guy must have had it because it's again very clean. But these are around. You have to look. If you live in a big city, there's a lot of places to do this. There's a lot of dealers that will have these, and people will bring them in. Maybe someone in their family passed and they didn't know what to do with their vinyl, so they bring it to a vinyl store and they give them a few bucks and then they resell it and they make some money on it. But this record here for $15, man, it's just amazing. And you know, Frank Rossellino's one of my favorite trombone players is on this. There's a one cut that Ben Webster's on. So it's really done really well. It's recorded in 1957. I believe this record came out in 1963. And again, you can tell that by the label. And you get to learn these things. There's a place on the internet that'll tell you all about that. The yellow indented contemporary label with the certain fonts and the way it's laid out, you can get to know when this was actually out. So this came out in 1963. It was not the original from '57, but I think it originally came out in '62. But this is a little bit later version than the original, and it sounds great. That stuff is around. What else is around are Blue Note classics. And again, these are reissues of the master of the original tapes, the analog tapes, and these are much less expensive than that Miles Davis or some of the other Tone Poet series that Blue Note has out. Basically, because the sleeves are a little bit less. It's like an old record sleeve. The other ones have a gatefold. They open up. There's more pictures. There's more information that they've added, and it's really cool stuff. The Tone Poet stuff's amazing. We'll talk about one of those here in a minute. But you could buy these original Blue Notes, and these sound better than the original record. This is remastered by Kevin Gray, who's another genius. And it sounds better than the original. So I'm saying, people say, why have the original of this? Well, it doesn't mean anything. This is a better sounding record. Collectively, yeah, maybe the original might be worth more money somewhere if you can find someone to buy it. But these sound really good. Now these are pressed in Germany at Optimal, but they're a good facility. But this stuff is out. There's a Cannibal Adderley, there's a Horace Silver. I think there's about a dozen of these out, and there's more coming every month. And you can have this in your library for, $20, $25. And they're great. They're really good quality. This happens to be my favorite Wayne Shorter record. Wayne also played on that Miles Davis record. Wrote a lot of great music, and is a great player. And the rhythm section on here is, guess what? It's Herbie and it's Ron Carter. And Elvin Jones instead of Tony Williams. So it's almost the same as Miles's group. Freddie Hubbard plays on this. The sound is really, really good. So Blue Note classics, they're around, and you can pick them up at a reasonable price. Here's a Wayne Shorter, but this is a Tone Poet. It's a good record too, but this is a Tone Poet. You can see that it's much more substantial. It's a gatefold. And, it's a $35 record. Again, these are going to go off press. All these things I talked about here, other than the contemporary, these are going to go off press when they're sold out. And they're not going to come back until the people who are pressing have time to repress them. They put them in order, and they kind of rank them in terms of sales. So if this record here sold quite a bit, this would probably get pressed before another record that didn't sell so well. But it might be a year, it might be 2 years before it comes back. And when it comes back, it's going to be a lot more expensive. So again, if you see something that you want, buy them now. I have one other record. It's an interesting record. Frank Sinatra's In the Wee Small Hours. This is a really interesting record. Frank Sinatra recorded on Columbia Records until the mid-50s. And Columbia stopped using Frank Sinatra because he didn't sell enough records. Interesting, isn't it? What a move. And then Frank went to Capitol that recorded in Southern California those of you who ever driven down the 405 freeway coming out of LAX, I think it became a Holiday Inn. I don't know what it is now, but there's a round building as you're going south, right off the freeway. That was Capitol Records' headquarters in the studio. But in the wee small hours, this was recorded about 1953, maybe, I don't know, 55, something like that. 1955. And Capitol took a real chance with this record. There's 16 cuts on here, and it's a pretty depressing record. Supposedly sounds good, and Nelson Riddle doing the orchestrations you can't miss, and with Frank, but he just came off a really bad relationship with Ava Gardner, and he was not a happy guy. In fact, he was almost suicidal. People may not know that, but he went through a really bad couple years when all of that fell apart. So he sang some of these these tunes that really only Sinatra did. These kind of tunes with such feeling, and a lot of it's because that's how he was living. And Capitol did they took a real chance with this, because there's 16 tracks of sad music. Titles: In the Wee Small Hours, Glad to Be Unhappy, Deep in a Dream, When Your Lover Is Gone, I'll Be Around, It Never Entered My Mind, I'll Never Be the Same, Stormy Weather. So these are not particularly, happy records, but this is one of Frank's most. He loved this record, and it's a great record. And what I'm interested in seeing, and I'm not so sure, I might not even open this, because this is on a label called Wax Time. I have a couple other Wax Times up in here, and none of them sound good. I am told, and I've heard through the grapevine, that this actually does sound good. This also has been redone by Analog Productions at QRP, but it's gone. It's back ordered. When are they going to have it again? I don't know. Might be a year, might be two. I don't know. But I really like this record, and I wanted to listen to it, and I'll probably open it. I'm told it sounds good. I can guarantee it doesn't sound as good as the Analog Productions version, but it's a good record, and Riddle's a genius, and Sinatra sings these kind of tunes like nobody else. One other record that just came in is, and I'm gonna listen to this tonight. This is a 45 RPM reissue on Verve, again by QRP. This was recorded and engineered at Sterling Sound, which is in New York, by George Marino, who just a couple of years ago passed away. He was a really, really great, a great engineer. But this is 45 Oscar Peterson's We Take Requests. One of my favorite records. I've got the original Verve back up in here, and I love this record. So this is around two. I think this is about a $60 record, but again, it's not bad. There's two records on here. Yeah, I'm going to have to change them a little bit more frequently on the platter, but I'm going to guarantee you that this really sounds good. This is recorded in 1964 in a club in Chicago, and it's done really well. It's a limited edition record. I think they did 1,000 records per stamper, which is really, really good. Sometimes these folks use these stampers and they'll press 5, 8, 10,000 records off one stamper, and by the time you get to 10,000, it's not going to have the same sound as the first 500 to 1,000. So they'll create a new stamper after they run out of 1,000. I don't know how many of these they made. Maybe they made 10,000 copies. I don't know, maybe less. But yeah, I mean, it's great packaging, and QRP, you can't go wrong. And that's not why I have a sweatshirt on today. I don't know these folks. I pay full price for these records. They're not. I mention them, they're not getting anything from it. You know, I don't have a dog on a hunt here. And I can tell you if they bring something out that is I don't like or doesn't sound good, I'll tell you. But they're really a great production facility. And finally, record I listened to last night, the 45 RPM edition of Coltrane Jazz on Atlantic Records. Again, this is a original tapes on this. I keep trying to remember where they pressed this. I think they did this at a place called Palace, which is in Germany. And again, it's good. But I have to tell you, the sound of this, you could hear the air going over Coltrane's reed on this, on these speakers here, which are good. They're not the best, but they're good. But this is still around. Coltrane made, I don't know, a bunch of records on Atlantic, Giant Steps, Oleg, a bunch of things, and they're all good. This was exceedingly fun to listen to last night. Anyhow, that's about it for what's new here in vinyl. And I'll do another one of these in a week or so, and maybe we'll talk about some vinyl, maybe we'll talk about some music, and tell some stories on some the musical end, not the vinyl or technical end. You know, I ought to tell you about this. This is laying here, and I'll tell you why this is laying here. Because when I want to look at my spines and the records, I need a light. And this is a great little light. Bill Fortney is a dear friend of mine, and Bill and I run some photography workshops together. Those of you who don't know it, I am a photographer and make a living teaching photography workshops. jackgraham.com, you can find me there. But we were teaching a workshop down in Kentucky, and we walked into Alcoa, at a store in Alcoa, Tennessee, actually not in Kentucky, Tennessee, and they had these lights. This is a wedge, they call it a wedge, and it's made by a company called Streamlight. And I gotta have to tell you, I've got 3 of these now, and they are amazing. I keep one I use when I take my dog out, and it's dark, or when we walk at night. I keep one in my camera bag, and I keep one here. These are about $90, but why are they expensive? Well, they're heavy. They recharge by USB-C. They're 300 lumens. That's really bright. And if you want to pop it up if you need to, you can have 1,000 lumens. And it's just a great quality product. They're made really well. Again, Streamlight. They're on Amazon. They're about $89.95. I saw them in a local store here, and I think they were $129, and they were sold out. So but they're not cheap, but they're really cool. Anyhow, that's about it for this version of Straight Talk with Jack. And before we sign off, thank you again. Subscribe. It'll come up when the new one comes up. Anything you want to talk about, you leave a comment, or you can send me an email at straighttalkwithjack@gmail.com. And we'll talk to you again. Thank you all. Bye-bye.